Hello friends, today in this live stream we will basically talk about the two very important hooks inside your React.js, which basically is called as useMemo and useCallback. So we will basically discuss about these two hooks in detail. So this is my React.js application, guys. You will see that this is a very basic application. So now I will basically take example here. This is my app functional component. So let's suppose I take two variables, guys. First will be apple. We will basically use state. We will use state hook. Initial value will be 0, and similarly we will take mango as well. So this will be the method. Use state will be 0. So we have two state variables, guys, apple and mango. First of all, I will explain you what is useMemo hook. First of all, I will show you the problem that useMemo solves by creating the problem. So let's suppose we have two state variables, apple and mango. Basically, initial value is 0 whenever you load this application. So here we will have two buttons, guys. We will basically say increase apple, and then we will have the second button which will say increase mango. So we will also show the values of these two variables. So you will see the value of apple is, and then we will print out the value of apple like this, and then we will say the value of mango is, and then we will show the current value of mango like this. Let me put break tags here. So now if you just refresh your application, guys, so you will see basically it is showing the current value of apple is 0, mango is 0, and we have two buttons out there. Whenever we click this button, I need to change this value of apple and mango. So let me assign a on click listener, guys. So whenever we click this value, we will say handle increase. We can directly say, we can use this hook function, which is, we can call this directly here arrow function. We will say set apple, and here we will pass here apple plus 1. We will say apple plus 1, and similarly we will say for the mango as well. We will assign this on click. So whenever we click this, we will say that inside this callback function we will call that set mango, and inside this, guys, we will say that mango plus 1. So now you will see that, guys, basically as I click this button, increase apple, the value of apple will change here. It will increase it by 1, and also in mango also. So what I am trying to suggest, guys, here inside useMemo, let's suppose we create a variable here which is depending upon that. Let's suppose we are having a function called as multiply. So I create this function, guys. This will be an arrow function, and we can basically print out a console statement that this multiply function is calling. And let's suppose we use this current value of apple here. So this function simply return apple multiplied by, let's suppose, 10. So basically, guys, this is it is returning the value here apple multiplied by 10, the current value of apple here. We can print out the function here. You will see that the result of this function. So the result of the function, I will say, is, we can call this function right here multiply. So this is basically, we will call this function like this, multiply. You will see that. So as I call this function, guys, you will see that this value will return the current value of apple multiplied by 10. So now if I basically see, guys, let me increase it onto a different line. So just look in the console, guys, the problem that I am showing you. Just inspect element and basically refresh your application. You will see current value is 0 every time, and you will see that basically now as I click this button, guys, you will see this function will execute because the value is dependent here on the current value of apple, because inside this function we are multiplied the current value of apple. So whenever the value of apple changes, this component will re-render, and definitely this function needs to execute. So that's why correct behavior. But if I press this button, increase mango, still you will see that guys multiply function is calling right here. So this is a huge problem. We don't need to call this function unnecessarily because this value is not dependent here. Mango value is not used inside this function multiply. You can see we are only using the value of apple. So we don't need to execute this function unnecessarily because this apple value remains the same. So every time it is calculating the value right here of this function, which we don't want. In this case we have a single function, but inside your production application you may have multiple functions which are running at the same time. So this will basically reduce the performance of the React.js application. So we need to prevent this. So how we can prevent this, guys? In this case we can use useMemo. We can wrap this function so that we will only execute this function whenever the value of apple changes. So whenever we click this button, so when the value of apple changes, then we multiplied it by 10 and print out the result. In rest of the case, whenever I click the button of mango, this value of apple is not changing. So in that case, we don't need to execute this function. So we will basically catch the result and we will basically memorize the result. So in JavaScript, guys, you may have listened the concept of memorizing. So that's why we use this useMemo hook. So now what we need to do, guys, we need to simply write useMemo. So this will be imported right here, guys, useMemo, and you just need to write this just inside parentheses, and inside this you just need to write this code right here. Just surround all this code right here like this that I've written right here. So you just need to surround all this code right here, useMemo, and put a comma, and then this is very similar to use effect, guys. So here you need to provide inside square brackets the dependency, so on which value this function is dependent upon. So here we will simply write here apple. If you don't provide anything, guys, it will only execute for the very first time whenever the function when the component renders for the very first time, then it will not execute. Let me refresh it. If I tell you, so it is saying that multiply is not a function. So yeah, so now, guys, this basically here it returns a value. It's no longer a function. So we need to simply don't write this. So it's just a value here. If I print out the type of variable, it's a number, it's not a function. So useMemo, guys, returns a number, it doesn't return a function. useCallback hook returns a function, but useMemo returns a number. Here you will see that. So it's a number, not a function. So we just need to print out this. So you will see the result of the function is 0. It will only execute for the very first time. If I increase it, you will not see, it will not update. So we do need to provide a value, guys, right inside this square bracket. So we need to provide that if the apple value changes, then we need to execute this function only if the value of apple changes. So you can even provide multiple values as well by comma. It is very similar to use effect here, but only here we are signifying that we only need to execute this function whenever the value of apple changes. So now if you execute this application, guys, if you click this increase apple, then you will see multiply function is calling and this result is there. If I press the mango button, you will no longer see this multiply function calling here. So that's exactly what we wanted, guys. So this is meant by the useMemo hook, guys. Basically it will increase the performance of your React.js application. It is asked in every React.js interview, guys. Whenever you go for a job, definitely interviewer will ask for this question. Definitely explain useMemo hook. So it's a very simple definition. It is used to increase the optimization of the React.js application, and it only returns the value. It doesn't return a function. So you can basically wrap your function code inside useMemo hook and just provide the parameters on which your function depends. That's all. So this is meant by useMemo hook. Now, guys, we will take basically an example to show you the useCallback hook. So let's suppose, guys, we have a function, again a function here, which is basically, let me just delete this. again we have this multiply function, guys. So this time, guys, basically inside use callback, guys, let's suppose we create a component here, child component. So inside this child component, guys, what we will do right here, so basically we will include this component right here, child component. So you will see we are including this child component that we have created. This is a functional component. So basically here we are including it. So if you now check, guys, you will see child component is loaded here. You will see that we are console logging this statement. So every time when we load the page, this child component will also render. If I basically increase, you will see if I put any sort of button here, if I press any sort of button, this child component again renders. This is not acceptable. We again need to prevent this behavior. How we can do that? We will wrap this child component using memo. If you want to prevent this process, you can basically import this memo. So now if you refresh this now will prevent this. It will only execute for the very first time, child component. And now if I press any sort of button, this child component will not re-render. So now the second problem occurs, guys, whenever we try to basically send out a function. Let's suppose we have made this function which is dependent upon this value, apple multiplied by 10. So now if I try to basically send this function as a prop, so you can see we are sending this function, and inside this we will catch this function right here. So what will happen, guys, every time whenever you re-render this component, this function will be destroyed and recreated. And this time if you now reload your application, now click, you will see every time when I click the button, guys, of apple and mango, every time this function will execute and your component will re-render. As you can see, we have wrapped it inside useMemo, but still it is not working. It is every time it is re-executing it, recreating it itself, because we are passing this function. So there is a concept in React.js, guys, which is called as referential equality. Referential equality means that every time whenever you re-render your component, all the functions that you define right here is destroyed and recreated. So definitely this component, child component, see this, and it always passes this function. We are passing it as a prop here. So that's why this child component re-render himself, because it sees that this multiply function has been changed. So now to prevent this, guys, we will use the use callback hook. So now we can simply say, we can import this use callback hook, and we can again wrap this like this, and inside this we can also provide the parameter. So let's suppose we only need to execute this whenever the value of apple changes. So now, guys, this time this type of operator, let's suppose if I say type of multiply. So this time, guys, type of multiply is the function. It's not a value. You will see it's a function. So the difference between useMemo and useCallback is that useMemo returns a value, but useCallback here returns a function. It is not returning a value here. It is returning a function, so it is callable. You can call this function. So right inside your child component, guys, basically we can inside this we can call this function. We can pass a value here. Let's suppose if I pass a value 5, this is a function, so that we can call this right here, and 50 result will be, I think, will be printed. If I refresh here, you will see that. So what is going on, guys? If I just press the button of apple, then your multiply function is calling here. You will see that. But if I press this mango button, it is no longer executing it, because we have putting a restriction out there which is called as we are only dependent upon the value of apple. We haven't provided the value of mango. So you can see that. So in this way, guys, you can see that. Basically, we can catch this value, guys. We can basically say number, and this time we will simply say number multiplied by 10. So whatever number that you provide right here, we can see we are providing this number 5 and we are catching it right here. So as this is a function, we will basically call this. So now if you refresh it, basically what will happen, you can see that 50 result will be printed out because we have passed here 5. So 5 multiplied by 10 comes out to be 50. So this value will not change. Every time when you press this button, this function will execute right here. So this was all about, guys, use callback and use memo hooks explained in one video. This is really helpful for a job interview, guys. If you go to job interview, this question will definitely get asked. So thank you very much for watching this video. All the source code is given in the description of the video that I used right here. You can go to the description and get all the source code. Thank you very much for watching this video.